A magical bead with a deadly power. Can Kofi save his village? It was market day in the village of Luma. People crowded around colorful stalls, their laughter and chatter filling the air. Kofi, a curious boy with big, bright eyes, wandered through the market, fascinated by the sights and smells. At one stall, a mysterious merchantino, dressed in a flowing green robe, sold shiny beads. The beads sparkled like stars in the sunlight, and people lined up to buy them. The merchant smiled as he handed out the beads, his voice deep and smooth. "These beads will make you stronger, faster, and braver than ever before," he said. Kofi watched as people admired their new beads, tying them around their wrists and necks. He saw Baisa, the strongest man in the village, lifting a huge bag of grain with one hand after wearing the beads. Everyone clapped, amazed by his strength. Kofi's best friend, Tommy, ran up to him, holding out a small red bead. "Look, Kofi. The merchant gave me this for free. Isn't it beautiful?" Tommy tied the bead around his wrist and grinned. But as the day turned to evening, strange things began to happen. The next morning, Baisa didn't come out of his hut. His wife cried, saying he couldn't move. His skin had turned pale, and his eyes were dull. Tommy, who was usually full of energy, looked tired. Her laughter was gone, replaced by a distant, empty stare. Kofi's mother warned him to stay away from the beads. "They may be pretty, but I don't trust magic that comes so easily," she said. Kofi decided to find out more about the merchant Titi. He followed him after the market closed, keeping to the shadows. The merchant walked to the edge of the village, where a tall tree stood alone in a clearing. Kofi watched as the merchant placed the beads he hadn't sold at the tree's roots. The ground around the tree glowed, and Kofi thought he heard whispers in the wind. The next day, more people fell ill, their energy drained. Kofi noticed that it was only those who wore the beads. "Tommy, take off the bead," Kofi begged his friend. But Tommy shook her head weakly. "I can't, Kofi. It feels stuck." Kofi tried to pull the bead off Tommy's wrist, but it wouldn't budge. It felt like it was part of his skin. Determined to save his friend, Kofi went to the tree that night. He dug around its roots and found a small box buried beneath. Inside were old beads, cracked and faded, and a piece of cloth with strange symbols on it. Suddenly, a voice spoke behind him. "Curiosity can be dangerous, little one." Kofi spun around to see the merchant standing there, his green robe shimmering in the moonlight. "Why are you hurting my village?" Kofi asked, his voice shaking. The merchant's smile was cold. "These beads feed the tree, and the tree feeds me. Without them, I would wither away. But you wouldn't understand. You're just a child." Kofi clenched his fist. "I don't care how old I am. I'll stop you." The merchant laughed, a sound like dry leaves in the wind. "You stop me. Go ahead and try." Kofi ran back to the village and told the elders what he had seen. But they didn't believe him. "The merchant has brought us gifts, Kofi. Why would he harm us?" Frustrated, Kofi decided to take matters into his own hands. He gathered his friends, Oma, Yari, and Suni, and told them everything. "We have to destroy the tree," Kofi said. "But how?" Oma asked, fear in her voice. Kofi looked at the sky, where the moon shone bright. We'll figure it out together. That night, the children returned to the tree, carrying torches. But as they approached, the ground began to tremble. The tree's roots moved like snakes, wrapping around their feet. The merchant appeared, his eyes glowing green. "You shouldn't have come back," he said, his voice echoing. Kofi felt fear grip him, but he refused to give up. "You're the one who doesn't belong here." As the roots tightened, Kofi remembered the symbols on the cloth. He shouted them out loud, not knowing what they meant. The tree let out a deafening roar, and the roots loosened, and it completely withered and died immediately. The merchant screamed, his body flickering like a shadow in the wind. Suddenly he collapsed and turned to sawdust. Indeed, the fight was over. Kofi and his friends were filled with great joy and they went home happily. That night all the people that were afflicted with the magic beads received instant healing. And they started wondering what might happen. The next day, Kofi and his friends told the elders of the village what conspired between them and the evil merchant. They praised them for their bravery and apologized for not believing him initially. The king of the village honored Kofi and his friends with great rewards. But Kofi's mom was devastated. "Merchant Titi would have harmed you guys. She didn't bother to tell me or your father. We would have believed you," she cried. Kofi felt bad. He hugged and apologized to her mother. "I will never hide anything from you again," he said. A great party was organized in honor of Kofi and his friends. Again, the king warned the villagers not to trust people too much, especially if they are from other villages. "All that glitters is not gold," the king concluded. There were lots of food to eat and drink. That day was a joyful and memorable day for Kofi and his friends, and they lived happily ever after. The end.